day in Manhattan, clear as could be, till the planes hit the buildings and changed history. They stood for an hour once the damage was done, but then suddenly crumbled. 10 seconds they were gone. There were cascading projections of steel into dust. Looked like explosions, but it was not discussed. So I turned off the TV and shut out the lights. It's all just illusion, right in front of my eyes. Well, I'm not scared of dying. We're all bound for heaven, just sharing the truth about 9/11. Now building number 7 dropped the cleanest of all, yet the world still knows nothing of this amazing free fall. There was no real reason. It wasn't hit by a plane. They say it was a fire, yet you can't see the flames. You see cascading projections of steel into dust. Looks like demolition, but it's never discussed. So I turn off the TV and shut out the lights. It's all just illusion, right in front of my eyes. Well, I'm not scared of dying. We're all bound for heaven, just sharing the truth about 9/11.
Okay. We're just telling the truth about 9/11. I had to come back early. Now, this is season 7, episode 13. Okay, this is May, what is it? May 3rd. No, May 2nd. Okay, I know what day it is. I thought I did. This is May 3rd. My watch is wrong. It didn't jump over. Okay, well, anyway, this is Saturday, the Saturday after May Day, which makes it the 3rd. And May Day had a lot of things going on around, but one of the fun things that happened, kind of fun, depending on your point of view, remember I played the Yes Men when they came up with the World Trade Organization solution for hunger, reprocessing human waste into McDonald's burgers? Well, they're at it again. Of course, those are the same guys that did about the crisis in Bhopal. They pretended to be Dow, apologizing and setting up $1 billion fund for the victims and drawing attention to that. These guys are really cool activists, but you know, sometimes it isn't that funny. But anyway, this was pretty good. This is Abby Martin of Russia Today, and I saw the report on Democracy Now! They gave it all of 30 seconds, but Abby Martin does a better job of covering this, so we're going to play Abby Martin's clip about the latest Yes Men working as Homeland Security agents, talking to a bunch of wannabe Homeland Security contractors. And anyway, if you're ready, then go ahead and...
More time.
Oh, you need more time, okay. Anyway, I guess they need more time on this, but the funny thing, you're going to see a little bit of this in that clip too, is one of the things the Yes Men did was they went to a Halliburton convention or meeting, and they brought out the personal escape pod, or it looks like they got it going. I hear the audio now. All right, if you're ready, well, you'll see the personal escape pod in the video once we get it going.
imagine if someone from the Department of Energy made an announcement that by the year 2030, the U.S. would be 100% dependent on renewable energy? And not only that, but partner with Native American nations to supply the sources? Well, believe it or not, this actually happened. But if it sounds too good to be true, that's probably because it is. See, this was just the latest elaborate prank orchestrated by the activist group, the Yes Men.
On behalf of the Department of Energy, I'm very excited to announce today a great new plan. It's beginning a process that will do nothing less than convert the United States energy grid into one that's powered entirely by renewable sources. By 2030, America will produce 100% of our energy from renewables, establishing us once again as a beacon of innovation and progress and as a global leader in confronting the supreme challenge of climate change.
Yes, at a meeting of the Homeland Security Congress, dozens of military contractors and lobbyists were hoodwinked into believing a fictitious new government plan called the American Renewable Clean Energy Network. Benedict Waterman, the man you just saw speaking, was actually Andy Bickelbaum of the Yes Men. And his talk was followed up by another impassioned speech from someone calling themselves Banna Slowhorse of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who was actually Gets Crazy Boy, an indigenous tar sands activist. Following these talks, Crazy Boy passed out native headbands, led the attendees of the conference into a celebratory circle dance. But if the dance wasn't hilarious enough, the contractors then lined up to gush about how excited they were about the conversion into renewables.
One of the sponsors also, we're part of Northrop Grumman. We're a large business, but very interested in seeing how we can support this novel cause.
That's fantastic. So excited.
Yeah, this is outstanding. I feel really good. It's a very emotional day.
Great.
Yes, that was a contractor from Northrop Grumman expressing his extreme enthusiasm for the project. But this type of stunt fits in the common tactics the Yes Men use to draw attention to political issues and social injustices. They operate under the mission statement that lies can expose truth. The Yes Men have done everything from impersonate Halliburton to the World Trade Organization, and I'm very happy to have Mike Bonanno of the Yes Men and Gets Crazy Boy join me now from New York. Amazing to have you both on.
Thank you very much.
Glad to be on.
So, Mike, I want to start by asking you, what the hell was this meeting all about, and were you surprised that someone from Northrop Grumman supported your plan for renewable energy?
Well, this meeting is like many that bring together government and defense contractors to try to create corporate welfare to support the defense industry. It's crazy. It's a place where defense contractors simply try to get money. And the idea is that this is somehow involved in our security. You know, homeland security is the topic. But in reality, it's anything but concerned with our security, because if we were actually concerned about our security, we'd be dealing with things like climate change and dealing with it proactively, not doing what they're doing, which is simply trying to peddle weapons.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's why I was surprised, I guess, to see someone from Northrop Grumman acting so excited. I mean, you weren't talking about weapons, you're talking about renewables.
Well, you know, surprisingly enough, most people are not megalomaniacally insane. Even people that work for Northrop Grumman. And if they're given the opportunity to do what they actually believe in their hearts is the right thing, they go with it. It's just a few oil industry lobbyists that actually think that it's a good idea. I mean, it's not even the lobbyists, it's the oil industry that's pushing our governments to prevent us from doing what we need to do to deal with this crisis. And that is a really big crime.
Well said, well said. Without giving away any of your personal tactics, Andy impersonated someone from the Department of Energy. You claim to be from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. How did you convince people that you're actually government officials?
It's not too hard. I mean, like, there's this weird romanticized view that America has on Native people. So you throw a hat on or a feather, and next thing you know, you're spending like $10,000 in Arizona for some shaman to teach you how to be a native. So it wasn't really too hard to fool some people into believing I was part of the BIA.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Mike, why did you choose to draw attention to renewable energy with this stunt, and how attainable would the plan you proposed actually be?
Well, the plan that it was proposed is actually based on real plans, and there's an article in Scientific American very recently that outlined converting to renewables in 13 years. There are other plans that are out there, many other plans, and actually 2030 is not that ambitious a number. There are entire countries right now that are on target to convert by 2020. And of course, even some very large industrialized countries are on target for 2030. So it wouldn't be that crazy for the United States to say, we've done really big things before. We could do something this big now.
Right. Gitz, considering the fact that indigenous communities have been virtually ignored by pretty much every government and that treaties have been violated for years, what was your reaction to people actually believing that this partnership was real? I mean, how out of touch are these people?
I don't know if it's really out of touch, but I mean, if you give people if you allow people to dream,
yeah.
What can come from that if they have action behind it? What could you do if you give the incentive to people that there is a better way? And we all know that we're barreling down this road of loss of species, climate change, big catastrophic events. The weather patterns we're having right here, no one can say for sure if they're going to be new America's pastime or if they're just going to be something that's just quickly passing. But what was important for us was just to help them realize this dream. They have the ambition. They really actually want a beautiful, healthy change for all of us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's important to humanize these people and realize that no one's innately bad. I mean, if the political establishment basically said we do want to do this, I'm sure everyone would jump on board and say, great, let's save the planet. Mike, I want to go back and talk about some of the other things the Yes Man has done. Let's take a look at Andy Bickelbaum posing as a spokesperson for Dow Chemicals on the BBC on the anniversary of the Bhopal chemical disaster.
It's 20 years since the disaster, and today I'm very happy to announce that for the first time Dow is accepting full responsibility for the Bhopal catastrophe. We have a $12 billion plan to finally, at long last, fully compensate the victims, including the 120,000 who may need medical care for their entire lives. And to fully...
that would have been a Howard Beale moment if only it were true, and it was at the time. What prompted the Yes Men to take on Dow specifically?
Well, Dow had created the largest industrial accident in history. Actually, it was Union Carbide, but Union Carbide acquired Dow. And when they acquired Dow, many people argued that they acquired their liabilities as well as their assets. But Dow claimed that in India, they didn't get any of their liabilities, that the liabilities had been settled by Union Carbide, despite the fact that there were hundreds of thousands of people who had never gotten adequate compensation. And the Bhopal plant site, the site of the largest industrial accident in history, had never been cleaned up. It hadn't been remediated, and now there was a second wave, another generation of children that were getting sick because of the water contamination on that site. And so we did it because we were asked actually by activists there and at Greenpeace to do something about that, to try to get people to realize that it was Dow that was now responsible for that legacy.
Gitz, the Yes Man constantly targets groups that favor profit over people, pranking TPP negotiations, the World Trade Organization's meeting. Why go after these groups?
They have some plan. They have some hand in playing all this. There's some influence. It also allows us opportunities like this to be sitting here in front of you to talk to you about the massive devastation that's happening in northern Alberta with the tar sands extraction and development, the industrial development up there. It allows us to say something like the Wet'suwet'ens who are camping out right now, that are living right now in the heart of the Enbridge pipeline, proposed Enbridge pipeline, that are adamant about not moving, that is their homeland, willing to defend. It allows us the ability to voice these things. To do an action like that or a stunt and to grab some of that attention and actually redirect it in a really positive way is super important. I believe that's why we do these things.
Absolutely. Mike, why does the TPP need the help of the Yes Men to be exposed?
Well, the TPP is one of these crazy bureaucratic proposals that in the end is designed to privilege profit over everything else. We got to start fighting the World Trade Organization policies, these neoliberal policies that were being applied religiously across the board, no matter what impact they had on people on the ground. And we started out attacking that, and we continue to attack trade policies, these bureaucratic things that are very hard to understand for a layperson, but that if you look at them, are very dangerous and damaging to people and the environment.
Absolutely. 600 plus corporate advisors, negotiations constantly in secret. I'm really happy you guys did that stunt, shedding some light on this. I wanted to take a look at probably the most absurd stunt from the Yes Men. I don't think we have time to actually play this clip, but the Halliburton survival ball, I just heard that we do have time. Let's check it out.
This is the answer. This is the Halliburton survival ball. It's 3 easy steps for deployment: suiting up, inflating, and of course, launching. Launching out of a building, and we have an artist's rendition of what it might be like in Houston when we launch our survival balls.
Mike, I want a double question here. What was the message you were trying to convey with the creation of the ball? And I think people are so frustrated. What advice do you give to people who want to disrupt the corporatocracy? We have about a minute left.
Well, the survival ball is about the absurdity of this system that we're living in and of the idea that we can survive climate change by simply fortifying our borders or creating these little bubbles that we can live in. We cannot escape this thing. We are in it together, and we have to deal with it together. And people like Gitz, who come from ground zero, the tar sands, his whole land and culture are being destroyed by this industry. And they know and they understand, and it hasn't hit us as strong yet, but it will soon. And that's what this is all about. It's all about talking about that and approaching it in a way that's funny and engaging.
Absolutely, you guys. Thank you so much. Mike Bonano, Gitz Crazy Boy from the Yes Men. Amazing to have you guys on.
Okay, those guys had a movie called The Yes Men Fix the World or Save the World, whatever it was, I forget, but it's good to watch. We have we have some criticisms of the Yes Men, but like they ignored 9/11, and also, what was that thing you just said? These are just contractors. They aren't really anybody yet. They're wannabe contractors. I mean, he's not in front of officials. I was thinking, what would happen if they got, impersonated, I don't know, some Supreme Court justices or something. I don't know who they would impersonate exactly, but announce that there was a brand new 9/11 investigation with full subpoena power, and that they were not going to allow Dick Cheney and George Bush to testify together again.
Sure.
Oh, I think that would be a great one for them to do, but the likelihood of them doing that is kind of nil. Well, anyway, here's my co-host, Alex.
Well, Bill, thank you for having me on again. Hopefully we can discuss some things tonight that will help people see reality as it is. And one thing that Abby Martin stated in that video is that she was surprised to see the oil tycoon appreciative of the lecture that he gave, the prank lecture at the beginning.
Right.
And I would say to her and anyone else that might be surprised, there really is no surprise. There is this...
nobody had their critical thinking engaged during that moment, that's for sure.
And there's definitely a con on the people that do care about the environment for people to masquerade and say that they support measures that would be more environmentally friendly.
I think we should just give money to Al Gore. Won't that fix everything?
That'll fix everything, along with a carbon tax program for the whole world. That is what a lot of people do believe, unfortunately, because of the thickness of the propaganda that's been directed at them. But I think that it's...
Yeah, let's force a lot of more poor people to have no heat this winter, and cut down on air conditioning. And, of course, that'll cause early deaths for a lot of elderly.
Right. I would suggest that
this is a really inhumane program. Isn't government supposed to be doing things to, benefit the people by, which they derive their power, from whom they derive their power?
The viewing audience that hasn't yet heard of Agenda 21 would really benefit from doing a little searching and research online. I care about the environment. I'm anti-GMO. I am anti the use of using depleted uranium as well as other armaments around the world, and so many other things that are disastrous to the environment. And I don't see these issues being raised by your mainstream Republican or Democrat. And that, in my opinion, is a travesty. It's a very serious issue. Now, in terms of the environmental effects from the occupations of Afghanistan, Iraq, and other countries, when you use depleted uranium, you contaminate the land for millions of years.
Yeah,
and of course, with the jet stream, that air is spread, those contaminants are spread around the world. No one escapes it. This is a core environmental issue that the mainstream environmental movement is not a part of bringing forth to your consciousness or anyone else that's consuming the mass media. And that's an issue. That's an issue that has to be addressed.
That's a real good point. What about Fukushima? We hear about it every once in a while, but no, we don't see any organized effort like we were talking about a long time ago, that places like Oil Can Henry's or other places that do oil changes and air filter changes should simply slip the air filter in a bag and send it to a central point where it can be tested. Maybe jot down a few things like, this was driven in the area of Tulsa, Oklahoma, whatever. Send it out, get it tested. If it turns out that it has radiation, they can actually, send it to a lab for the expensive test to find out what type of radiation, and that would, nail it right to Fukushima probably. But why aren't we doing this? I mean, these are things that are critical to the survival of human beings everywhere, not just in our country, but why don't we care about our country? I saw them pointing every which way when it came time to who is going to examine fish that are in the water. Well, it wasn't the EPA's problem, because they were on land and in the air over here on the shore, didn't it? And nobody else. In other words, it boiled down to, out of 5 agencies, nobody's job was to test tuna for Fukushima's radiation. But there was a number of school projects where school children actually did radiation tests.
Right.
And they found that 90% of the tuna definitely had radiation in it.
I do recall reading an article about organ tuna this week. That was not a positive story. I do want to say that for those that are concerned about this plume that's coming over late this spring or summer, one of the best things you can do for your health is to uptake your consumption of chlorophyll, or AKA green superfood, things of that nature. There's also other things one can do to detox. There's been a lot of geoengineering in the Portland area and across the nation this week. This is why your health is number one. It's step one to realize something's going on. It's taken a step further to be proactive when it comes to your health, and not just assume that because these things are happening that automatically you're going to die or get cancer. We certainly need to be aware of it, but we certainly should be concerned about our health as well, and not, the last thing we want to do is nothing in response. We want to live healthy lives in response to the things that we're learning.
Now, the whole point about, correcting your diet or adding to your diet, you have a way to kind of avoid the possibility or reduce the probability of thyroid cancer. Now, that's where the radiation would collect in the form of radioactive iodine, and you can stem that off by, ordinary iodine. You take iodine supplements or whatever, and it fills up all the gathering capacity your thyroid has, and so when the radioactive iodine comes along, there's no room, it doesn't take it, and that's the theory behind it. But it doesn't help you for the rest of your body. In fact, well, actually, I just heard about a scientific, maybe it's probably too far away to be a breakthrough, but it's more like alchemy, where they were able to reduce radioactive components through a process to, components that were not radioactive anymore. Now, that would be the holy grail of this problem for sure.
Well, certainly there's definitely a lot of technologies out there that could heal people beyond the technologies that are publicly spoken of today, without a doubt. So when I hear people talk about healthcare, it's difficult to not get a little bit frustrated when you know that the healthcare system could be completely overhauled, but it's not. And the insurance companies have benefited from what's been pushed forward, and a lot of this seems to be done just to divide us as a country.
Well, remember, the insurance companies wrote Obamacare, so now it's no surprise when you see, doubling and tripling of the fees that you normally pay under this new program. It was written specifically to provide the insurance companies with more revenue while giving them less responsibility. And it includes installing death panels and everything. That you've heard death panels. They definitely decide whether it's cost effective to spend another $500,000 to give you 10 more days of life, and they're going to jerk the plug because that reduces corporate profit if you don't. So,
and shows like this exist to present some of these ideas that people have never heard about. And what I believe is that a government engaged in genocide does not care about your health or your health care or the next generation. Any system of control, any empire involved in spreading depleted uranium across the country, across
how
the
can
planet.
that possibly be considered by any moral, right-thinking group, no matter what? I mean, if we were desperately defending ourselves, and that was the last-ditch effort, even then it's not rational, but we did it without that even being a condition.
Right, and this is just a common sense response to a widespread problem. When you have millions of people being murdered violently by force because they were born in the wrong country during the wrong era, that empire does not have your health care as part of their interests. And so what I want to say calmly to those that are of the faithful, the loyalists, I would call them, those that are faithful and are true believers, I guess, in the religion that has become mainstream politics, for those that believe such things, to me it seems selfish to say, I'm not going to look at things like 9/11 and other things that we can document have taken our country and planet to a very dark place. To say that I don't want to look at that because I want this and I want that, when people operate from a mentality of, I'm only going to vote for people that tell me they're going to give me what I want, it's bad energy, it's bad mojo. You don't end up a free society. You end up in chains. Your children end up as chains. Your sons and your daughters at some point end up in some bad situations later on. And that's the very important message of 9/11 Truth. And we would love to see some of these other commentators out there start addressing some of these issues, because to be a 9/11 Truth person in today's society takes a little bit of guts, because you risk being ostracized on a social level. If you're ever in a position where you can corrupt the world, they will use your activism against you. So this is the real world that we live in this day and age.
Man, they're over there messing with all the lights. We had it just the way we like it, and then they come in and start flaring us out. Yeah, we're okay. It looks great up there. I look great. No, anyway, sorry. No, but
it's been a long time since I've had health insurance, and it's been a long time since I've had dental insurance.
I'm going to test it all here again. Now I just got another thing that says, this is how, if you've been having trouble contacting us, here are some new numbers, or here's the way to do it. So
right.
I'm going to go ahead and try it one more time. I have some stuff that I'll deal with. But if the crew in there is ready to run this Michael Ruppert, we have a clip from Michael Ruppert in an interview with Media Matters, and he's talking about the how he actually got all the goods. He caught them red-handed with insider trading, and he links it all the way up to officials in the CIA. Insider trading just before 9/11, trading on put options for American Airlines and United Airlines, and some of the insurance companies that just happened to be in the impact zone, so their stock went down necessarily. But anyway, if you're ready in there, go ahead and roll that Michael Ruppert clip.
Is, however, a Bush. Now, the Bush family is a completely different kettle of fish than George W. Bush standing alone by himself. Okay, the Bush family, and probably one of the biggest investigative pieces that I wrote after 9/11 was absolutely proving of massive insider trading on the financial markets. And I'm talking Tokyo, Toronto, New York, London, Berlin. So there was obviously huge foreknowledge with massive put options being placed on American and United Airlines.
Welcome to another episode of Media Mayhem. Today's episode is going to be part 2 with Michael Ruppert, investigative journalist. He's actually a former LAPD cop turned investigative journalist. And I think something just before we get started that I wanted to explain to you guys, and I had a better chance to get to know Mike since the last interview. And part of what is really important, particularly for our show, is that Mike gives you a look into the kind of investigative journalism that's rapidly disappearing, because even when he was doing some of his best work, he was writing it somewhere where it wasn't going to be censored in his own newsletter. And I think that people should listen and hear about some of the important work that he's done and realize that this is kind of missing on the spectrum these days. And when you're looking at mainstream media and even a lot of the internet, you're not going to see this kind of reporting. And this is what you should be looking for and demanding from your journalists. And with that, I'd like to welcome Mike to the show again.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Thanks for coming. I wanted to just I give everybody sort of a quick idea that you're an author, an investigative journalist, author of 2 books, Crossing the Rubicon, The Decline of the American Empire at the End of the Age of Oil, and also Confronting Collapse, The Crisis of Energy and Money in a Post-Peak Oil World. And we spoke a little bit about, and you currently host a radio show, The Lifeboat, on the Progressive Radio Network. And you also mentioned that you wanted, in relationship to your book Collapse and also the movie Collapse, that you have a website that people can go to.
I founded a company called Collapse Network, or CollapseNet. You can find it at collapsenet.com, not .net, but collapsenet.com. And it is a daily synthesis and a digest plus original work by writers I've worked with for many years. That uses credible sourcing from mainstream news media, but not the headline overview stories, but the detail stories, to form a pretty accurate picture that replaces what people are not being told is the overall big picture in the mainstream. I mean,
we were talking before the show even started about the fact that you don't look to mainstream media for your news. And why is that?
Well, I do look for well-sourced reporting on small, if you will, substantive stories on smaller points. In other words, a bill being passed here or an incident that took place here. That's done as we know how to do as journalists, with proper sourcing, attribution, and so on and so forth. I don't use mainstream news media at all for anything that involves a general picture of anything, because I don't trust it. Absolutely don't.
So, and you said, I asked you, and I was curious, when you hear the U.S. government announcing that they've done something, whether it be under Obama or former President Bush 43, when you hear that, you seem to automatically distrust what you're hearing.
Absolutely.
And like on a gut level. And where does that come from? Why is that? Because I think people watching are going to say, well, everything, do you always respond that way? And why is that?
Well, it's experience. It's 30 years of experience of knowing and being personally involved with many of these stories, knowing the fact that what mainstream has reported on the large scale of macro is absolutely not true. What we were told about, just for example, what we were told about Osama bin Laden was a lie. What we were told about TWA Flight 800 was a lie. What we were told about Waco was a lie. What we were told about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was a lie. What we were told about, almost everything was a lie on the big issues. And unfortunately, we live in a place now where the consumers of news have been so dumbed down, they don't bother to question anymore, and they just kind of absorb that, or I think in many cases now they ignore it.
I think that, and I think that also it's so repetitive that they begin to absorb it. Maybe initially they may have some doubts about what they're reading, but it keeps being written and over again until they actually make it a fact. And we were talking about this the last time, that something we've seen from the Bush administration, the rewriting of history. If they say it enough times, hopefully people will begin to forget what the actual truth is.
Yes.
And so let me talk to you a little bit about Osama bin Laden, because I thought this was an interesting thing that you said that we were lied to about it. And you actually wrote a piece after about the fact that after Osama bin Laden was captured and then killed, after he was killed, they produced DNA results showing that this was Osama bin Laden, to prove that they had indeed killed the Osama bin Laden. And you actually had a molecular biologist write and in a piece that you were writing about the death of him, questioning whether or not the Obama administration had killed him. And in his piece, he said that the one thing I know about DNA, and you repeated this, is that you cannot, repeat, cannot take a tissue sample from a shot in the noggin dead guy in a north central Pakistan Special Forces op, extract the DNA, prepare the DNA for assay, test the DNA, curate the raw DNA sequence data, assemble the reads or QC the genotype, compare the tested DNA to a reference, and make a positive identity determination. And this is coming from a very well-respected microbiologist who did not go on the record, though. All in 12 hours, and he's saying you can't do all of that all in 12 hours, let alone transport the tissue samples all the places they need to have gone in order to get this done. So do you base your distrust, do you say that President Obama was lying about killing Osama bin Laden because of the DNA issue, or is there something else behind it?
Well, there's a much longer and deeper history to that. In my book, Crossing the Rubicon, The Decline of the American Empire at the End of the Age, which is like 600 pages, 1,000 footnotes, it's in the Harvard Biz Library. It's a reference book now. It's very popular.
And it's used in teaching.
Very much in many universities, and it's like way high on the Amazon poli-sci reference list. So it's never been challenged. But and what I track in that, and here I give great credit to another researcher who was working from the time of 9/11 on, Paul Thompson, who had an incredible the terror timeline. You can Google that; you'll find it instantly. It's all tied to mainstream news sources around the world, whether it's Times of India, Times of Pakistan, Al Jazz, but major publications that you and I know.
And we are back, and this is 9/11 was an inside job. Bill Olson is stepping in here, and I will just offer some post comments to that video. By the way, Michael Rupert did allegedly kill himself, although many indicators indicate that he did in fact kill himself because he referenced certain things he was struggling with prior to April 13th, 2014. What I think is a little bit ironic about that is Michael Rupert was also in the San Luis Valley of South Central Colorado. He was also someone that escaped from the West Coast. I left in 2011. At some point in late 2011, after giving a 9/11 talk, eventually steps led to him finding Crestone, Colorado. And like Michael Rupert, although I have chosen to stay in the body for now, no. But Michael Rupert did come back to the West Coast, and he described the sense of being back in the Matrix as he was in Seattle and seeing people rushing along, and and I have a lot of empathy for that, returning to Portland and doing a lot of walking in the city and seeing a lot of people rushing along to get their resources just so they can live here and live the Portland lifestyle. And that is not a slam on Portland. That is a observation of where society's focus happens to be. And as long as you keep people's focus on survival, they don't have time for 9/11 truth.
And you just mentioned about the Portland lifestyle. It depends on whose lifestyle. I go to the river with my dogs before I come to the studio. That way they're all exhausted and just ready to sleep. And when I went to the river this morning, I had just gone to the bank to pick up some money so I could go have myself a big breakfast afterwards. And I nearly tripped over this guy that I couldn't see. And he was in the tall grass, and he was kind of bundled up in a fetal position. I don't know for sure if he had a sleeping bag or if it was just pulling his coat up tight over his head, but he had just survived the rain, a big torrential downpour that happened as I was driving up. But he was sitting there still sleeping, and I walked past him, not past him, almost over him. I had to turn around and give him $20. You know, I charge my breakfast if I have to. And the guy jumped up. I told him, go get something to eat. He took off just happy as a clam. I mean, I told him I was sorry that he had to live that way. And you know, that's right here in Portland. And what we do is we hide it. We send those people away. We lock them up. And then when it's really time where they really need the shelter, like during the minus sub-zero temperatures we had, they had, 6,000 people looking for shelter, and they had shelter for 2,000 or something like that. It was a ridiculous thing. One shelter only had 1,200, and it was the only one that they were talking about on the TV. So if, assuming a homeless guy has access to a TV to even see the ad, how do they even find out about anything? And what do? Wait until somebody comes and finds their carcass? Oh, there's a problem. Yeah, we didn't clean up the carcass soon enough. Some of our people saw them. We can't have our people seeing what's going on.
Right. Well, one thing I can say in response to that is sometimes we find ourselves in difficult situations and we don't know why. And as someone that has returned to Portland homeless, now in my second month here, slept in my truck last night, not too far off 39th and Hawthorne, and I know what it's like to try to park your car somewhere where no one sees you because you're so ashamed. And I know what it feels like as I'm going through it now to have people turn their back on you because you wear the homeless label. And there's a lot of rules that people don't speak of publicly that they live by. And that is, if someone is at a certain level, they deserve it. Kind of like saying that a rape victim deserves it because you wore spandex. So if we don't tolerate that attitude in our society, which many men and women do not, why do we tolerate the other attitude? If you're homeless, you deserve it. Or maybe you're a thief or there's something wrong with you. What I've learned from this experience, which I'm not talking about at great detail now, but in a future episode of my own, I will, is to have compassion for all living creatures. I've always felt this in my heart, but now it's all the way. And then to understand how this city can drive someone completely bonkers to drug, to drink, to stick things in their arm when they feel that they are invisible by their own community, even if they're on Access TV, doing a show for 6 years, as I did, 313 episodes. But to return to Portland, homeless, that is profound. But what does it require of me and of people in those situations? It requires the strength. I hope to be in a situation in the future, Bill, where, yeah, it's good to also help and give someone food when they need it, but sometimes it's not food, and sometimes it's not money. It's words of encouragement.
Right.
It's you spending 5 minutes with that person, not giving them a few dollars and walking away, but looking them in the eyes, actually patting them on the shoulder, having that cup of coffee with them, asking them questions about their lives. I'll tell you, I walk for hours and hours and hours and see people walk in fear in this town. Fear that someone that isn't dressed as nice as them might hurt them or rob them or knock them down without even wanting to know who is that person that's walking, looking so bewildered. I would say connect with another human being.
Yeah.
That's so much more than you can do than just simply giving them a piece of bread and saying you've done right for your society.
Then there's the cops that come across that homeless person. Look out, she's got a cat and a butter knife.
Let me also say this in regards to the police, because we talked about from the police last
They were
week.
afraid, yeah.
The police, despite all the corruption and what you see on the internet, I don't hate all police, and a lot of the police in Portland have to deal with a massive mental health crisis. And again, we come back to the question, what causes those mental crises? When someone is unraveling,
SSRIs.
it's because they... Not necessarily. It is, but when you feel completely alienated by your city or by the world, horrible things happen with the mind. I am a believer in the supernatural, and I do believe there are many energies here that plague the drunk, that plague the hurting. I've seen it. I felt it. It is real. And unless you're on that other side and you are walking from Hawthorne to Burnside, crossing that ridge back and forth, and you can't even get a job because the competition is so fierce, it is then and only then that you will feel that feeling. But I think everything happens for a reason in this world, and I think that we should even understand why we're in this new world order. We should understand why we are in the empire that we're in, and we should ask the question, what can we do for our fellow brothers and sisters to make the world a better place? Just out of principle.
There is cause and effect, but I'm not saying if everything was planned and already figured out, then I wouldn't have to do anything. It's just going to happen. I don't care.
I
don't believe in that stupid natural stuff.
Sure.
I just want I want to say that you can be a decent, caring, loving human being without ever once believing in astrology, without ever once believing that there are supernatural powers that you don't know about, but you can talk to them and they can talk to you. Oh yeah, okay. Anyway, I assume we got the next video ready? Or is that a phone call? I'm not sure. Phone call. Oh, a phone call already? Well, I wasn't... Well, I will say this. You want to take a phone call? The next video is about 12 minutes long, so we'd go out on it. Well, we'll take that phone call just this once, but, next time wait till we ask for him. Go ahead.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Yes, the earlier film about Osama bin Laden, Perry Mason used to have a saying, corpus delicti,
yes,
which means no body,
well, show us
no murder.
It's the body of evidence is what they're talking about, but yeah.
Yeah, but you have to remember, in most cultures, including ours, once you kill somebody, you give the body to the family.
You take it out to sea and you dump it in the water.
Well, they're not supposed to give it to the family.
And then you invent a tradition that says, yeah, they always throw the body away in the water. They always put it on a Navy ship, take it out, and dump it in the water. That's a new Muslim tradition now. Of course, I'm being facetious.
To prove that they killed him, they should have gave it to the family. So since they didn't give it to him,
well, you don't have to worry about that. He was dead since 2001, and they were just lying. It's as simple as that. And in 2004, Madeleine Albright said something about, we ought to take him off of ice and bring him out now. It'll help us win the 2004 election. So, I mean, a lot of people knew he was on ice somewhere, you know, whether it was figurative or not, but that's the story. So,
okay, that's my only comment, and thank you very much.
Oh, right on, and keep watching. What I want to do now is illustrate, you know, something that's just outrageous. Our news people can interview the top people, and we just had Eric Holder was subpoenaed again, this about Benghazi again, now that we have the latest leaks in the emails and all that. But are we ever going to see anybody prosecuted? And are we ever going to see any reporters ask any real hardball questions? Well, here's the sad part. A comedian who used to be on The Daily Show is, you know, he got to interview Keith Alexander. So we're going to go ahead and play this, and we'll be back next week.
General Keith Alexander is a decorated military veteran who ran the NSA for the last 8.5 years. During that time, he faced questioning from the highest-ranking officials in the land. But now, he would face the opposite of that.
So first, General, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Looking back on your time at the NSA, do you have any regrets, such as not retiring 1 year earlier?
You know, I thought about that, and, you know, at times you think, if I had just retired, somebody else would have had this burden. It would have been wrong for me to leave that for somebody else to do.
Do you think that the NSA is suffering from a perception problem with the American people at the moment, bearing in mind that the answer to that is yes?
Absolutely. You know, the first assumption is that you're collecting on the American people. And therein lies the problem, because the reality is the target is not the American people.
No, the target is not the American people, but it seems that too often you miss the target and you hit the American person standing next to it going, whoa, whoa, him!
But you see, we're not just out there gathering U.S. communications, listening to their phone calls or collecting their emails. But that's the first thing that people jump to.
But you are out there doing that. You're just saying you're not then reading them. You are gathering that data.
No, so in terms of going after U.S. infrastructure or sitting here in the United States, you know, talking to A and B, talking in the United States, we aren't collecting that. We don't collect that. We do collect the metadata, a to-from number, date, time, group, and duration of a call. That's all that's in there.
But that's not nothing.
No, that's not nothing.
Significant information, otherwise you wouldn't want it. Is this the argument then that to get the needle you need the haystack?
Well, that's part of the argument.
Right, but people's concerns, I think, are that you're not just taking the haystack, you're taking the whole farm and the county and the state, and you've now got some photos of the farmer's wife in the shower as well.
So NSA is not allowed to go do that on its own. It has oversight. And so what the courts, Congress, and the administration do is say, if you're going to do this, it has to comport with the Constitution. So the question I think the American people really have to ask is, are we doing the right things to protect the nation and our civil liberties and privacy? I am the biggest advocate of freedom of the networks, internet, and if we could come up with a way of segregating all the terrorist communications, one, it would really help us and protect our civil liberties and privacy. And you know, there was a great statement by somebody, you could probably get this into a part of that. You know what we really need to do is all the bad guys need to be on this section of the internet. And they only operate over here. All good people operate over here. All bad guys over here.
Are you talking about Pinterest?
No, you know, bad guy.
Oh, I thought you meant all the worst people in the world in one area, so I thought you were talking about Pinterest, because that seems to be where they kind of assemble.
Oh, could be.
They are the worst people. Oh, look, I've found this gopher bedspread. I'd love that. Shut up. Shut up.
So I've not seen that.
That's what you haven't seen. As director of the NSA, you haven't seen Pinterest.
That's right.
So that's where the terrorists could have been hiding all these years.
And I've led a sheltered life.
How much data do you need to keep Americans safe?
That's a tough question. I don't know the answer to that. Here's what I do know. Look at the last 12 years, 13 years since 9/11. We've had a tremendous and remarkable record. That wasn't by accident.
But you're always going to err on the side, aren't you, in your position of wanting more rather than less to be safe?
Well, absolutely. And the court is going to take just the opposite view and say, do you have the necessary rationale for having this data?
That's what I'm saying. So those two principles of the NSA are built to clash. You have one side saying, let's take everything. You have one side saying, let's protect privacy. Those two things don't work together.
Well, you have to balance them, but I think you can do both.
It's been said that your motto was collect everything. Is that true?
For specific problems.
Right. But you do understand that collect everything is also the motto of a hoarder. That's the fundamental principle which ends up with someone living alongside 1,500 copies of newspapers from the 1950s and 6 mummified cats.
What I would tell you is, let's go to where that statement applied, Iraq. And the situation was 2006. And the issue was the number of casualties for us and our allies was rising.
In your mind, has the NSA ever done something illegal?
In my time, no. Not that I know of. You know, one of the most impressive things that I've seen in my career was people who've made a mistake that could be a huge mistake stepping up to say, I made a mistake. And in every case, to my knowledge, everyone except for 12 individuals stepped forward at the time they made those mistakes.
Right, but you can't say everyone except for 12. That's like saying I've never killed anyone apart from those 3 people that I have buried under my patio at home.
The issue is, I think the key issue is that I was trying to make is, in every case, we reported. In some cases, those who made a mistake didn't report but were still caught.
Why should the American people trust the NSA?
Well, from my perspective, because of what they do to protect this country every day. These are good people trying to do the right thing.
Right, but much of your reassurance there is based on your own moral code. The idea of you thinking, well, I wouldn't abuse this power, so why would anyone else? I would. If I had access to that kind of information, I would abuse the hell out of it. I'd be looking up information about everyone that I knew. I know that.
Everybody who goes through the training, they'd say, John, here's the deal. You're going to get access to this data. But you can't use it for these things, you can't use it for this, and you can't use it for this.
Sure, I definitely won't do that. Where's my computer?
Right, and so as soon as you get on the computer, what happens, you type in...
What's her name? God, she screwed me over so bad.
Boom,
Where's her
and
boyfriend?
you hit return?
There.
And
you bitch! Oh my God! Oh my God!
If you were caught doing that, then you would either be removed...
Or promoted.
No, referred to the Department of Justice as we did on several of those cases.
Let's talk about Snowden. What would you like Snowden to know right now other than significantly less?
I would like to set him down in a classified setting and say, you want to see the damage you've done? And lay that out on the terrorist side and others. So he knows in his heart, and he would have to live with that the rest of his life.
Right. But you're giving information to the one man on Earth guaranteed to leak it. Is it any wonder that Americans are concerned about your judgment regarding their data?
Well, you know, you're asking ideally if we had a way of sitting him down and that he's not going to go leak more data, and you could show him, do you understand what you've done? And from my perspective, I don't think he understands the true damage that he's done.
Right. Okay, so finally, let's talk about branding. The NSA's brand has been damaged. I think that's fair to say, right?
Right.
As we learned with Blackwater, you don't have to change the substance of anything that you do as long as you visibly rebrand.
Okay.
So let's try this. The Washington Redskins. It's a slightly less tainted brand than yours.
Yeah, but probably not a good one to go with.
Sorry, okay, no good. How about this?
Mr. Tiggles.
Mr. Tiggles is not just the mascot, it's also the name of the agency, like Chuck E. Cheese. Then a journalist can't say the NSA is storing huge amounts of data on foreign countries. Instead it's saying, Mr. Tiggles is storing huge amounts of data.
In the boot.
Isn't he clever? It's in his boot. Oh, you've massively overstepped your bounds, Mr. Tickles, but I can't stay mad at you.
That's
You
right.
just want to keep me safe.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to work.
Okay, how about rebranding yourself as a great listener?
The only agency in government that really listens.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Because in many ways, the NSA is the perfect partner. So, let me introduce you to the new NSA, Trevor.
I think this is good.
Tell us about your day, everything about it. How's Mohammed at work? How is he? What's he been doing?
Trevor.
So, if you had to choose one of these, which would it be?
Well, I think that's something that perhaps you could have people vote on.
So there you have it. At long last, Americans are being allowed to vote on something having to do with the NSA. Just pick up your phone and call any number and say A, B or C into the handset. Don't worry, your vote will be collected.
Okay, and we're back. Bill, thank you for having me on tonight. A lot of interesting
I'm
subject
still laughing
matter.
from that. That's such a good one. That was such a... Anyway, go ahead.
A lot of good stuff, and some of the things that I talked about tonight, I'm going to elaborate on. I have a number of topics planned for a future series that I'm going to be bringing back to PCM TV. But in the meantime, I'm looking to find work and other things. While I'm here, I have some information as to how to contact me, my email, my website, my Facebook, my YouTube, so you can check out what I've been doing the last couple of years. You can also watch my old episodes that aired right here on PCM TV that were shot in this room, directed by Bill. And you can find those at youtube.com/AlexAnswery. I just seem to have left off an A, so just add an A there in front of the N. That is my email. That is my phone number, I think. So for those that don't know, I've been sleeping in my truck. I've been looking for work. And I found that work is very difficult to come by in this town unless you know somebody or unless you have certain experience or more experience than the other guy. And sometimes it's not good to be overqualified for certain positions. And I have contemplated, even as recently, Bill, as even though we didn't talk yet about it, because I don't want to dwell on my own problems, as recently as yesterday, I'm still contemplating leaving Portland because it sucks not having enough to do here in this town. Wandering from, Fred Meyer Deli to Whole Foods and using the Wi-Fi and just being in society on foot. Coming back to PCM is a very grounding experience. And I truly believe that I came back to Portland to start my show again. And the focus of the shows, we're believing the show here, but the last version of the show was more of a news show that covered a lot of topics in one show. But there's certain topics that I want to revisit in kind of mini documentary style, so we can kind of hone in on the information. So I want to thank Bill for being here after all these years, now in his 7th season. That's just amazing. There was some May Day protests recently as well in Portland and Seattle, and my hope is that as the future goes forward into the future, we see more people getting involved in 9/11 Truth and other forms of activism, so we can continue to show the world that people are waking up in terms of the larger picture, not just the smaller pictures that might divide us. But
we'll have to see if Joe Anybody would contribute to this show, because he takes so much footage in this area.
Well, I just want to say this real quick. I'd like to see more shows on PCM TV. So the work of Mike Smith, the work of Joe Anybody, the work of Joe Anybody, I believe his YouTube is youtube.com/Joe Anybody.
Yeah.
I would like to see more activists here at PCM TV. I'd like to see more news shows here on PCM TV. I would like to help out on some of the news shows. There is some room available. And I have heard some requests from some viewers that they would like to see more news programs that cover the real information, not the mainstream propaganda. So I would love to see more people come to PCM TV and start their own show. People on the internet also want to see your show as well. People are very impressed by our productions here at PCM TV. A lot of other cities don't have what we have.
And we're gone.